The Scythians, who first migrated from Central Asia, after being expelled by the Massagetai, came to the Pontic steppe. And here they settled after displacing the Cimmerians, who were the dominant power at the time of their arrival. The Scythians, after they settled here, were no longer just the wandering nomads, in search of good cropland or raiding opportunities. They expanded their economic and political power, and were able to establish themselves as a dominant force in the region. Once a group of nomadic people divided among themselves, now began to be united under powerful warrior chieftains, and organize well-planned military campaigns to conquer and expand their territory. They expanded southward beyond the Caucasus Mountains, and began to take part in the political upheaval already taking place in West Asia. The Scythians in the West Asia, under King Isbekiah, were allied with Manians, and around 676 BC, the Scythians together with Manians marched against the Assyrian king Esarhaddon, but these allied forces were defeated decisively by Esarhaddon, and King Isbekiah was later killed in a retaliatory military campaign. A few years later, sometime around 670 BC, King Bartachua, Isbekiah's son and a successor, sought rapprochement with the Assyrians, and asked the Assyrian king Esarhaddon to send him one of his daughters to be his wife. Rather than being an arrogant bravado on the part of the Scythians, it is more likely to reflect the careful diplomacy of the period. And this event could be seen in an Assyrian text, where Esarhaddon is asking the oracle of the sun god Shamash, "Will Bartachua, if he takes my daughter, speak words of true friendship, keep the oath of Esarhaddon king of Assyria, and do all that is good for Esarhaddon king of Assyria?" No answer is shown, but a close relationship blossomed with Bartachua, which suggests that the relations might have been successful, and the alliances were made. And with this alliance, the Scythians became a vassal, and thus an extension of the Assyrian Empire. Scythians thus remained allied with the Assyrian Empire. Bartachua defeated the state of Mani for the Assyrians, and imposed Scythian hegemony over it. In 653 BC, Medeus, his son, invaded the Medes, who were at war with the Assyrians. And with this victory, started a period that Herodotus calls Scythians' rule over Asia. He soon expanded to the state of Urartu. Soon after 653 BC, with Assyrian approval, in alliance with the Lydians, entered Anatolia, and defeated the Cimmerians. Scythians reached their peak in the West Asia under King Medeus, with its border extending from Halys in the west, to Caspian and the eastern border of the Media in the east, Transcaucasia in the north, to Assyrian Empire in the south. The Scythians, led by their king Medeus, having established themselves, they set out to invade Egypt. They overran the Levant and Palestine, until the borders of Egypt, where they turned back, due to the marshes of the Nile Delta, and Pharaoh Psamtik I convinced them to turn back, by offering them gifts. They returned without any large incident, but they plundered the temple of Aphrodite Urania, at Ashkelon, while on their way back. Throughout the middle decades of the 7th century, Assyria stood strong. But with the founding of the Neo-Babylonian dynasty in 626 BC, and the rapid rise of Babylonian power, the Assyrian Empire began to fragment. By this time the Medes had grown in strength, and had opened negotiations with the Scythians. Looking at the opportunity, the Scythians, working with the Medes, began to raid widely throughout the old Assyrian domain, feeding off the carcass of the decaying empire. The Scythian power was then brought down in West Asia by the duplicity of Cyaxares, the king of Media. In around 625 BC, he invited the Scythian elite to a great feast, and when they were heavily drunk, he promptly slaughtered them, including Medeus. Those who survived this treachery fled back toward the safety of their homeland. By 620 BC, after the death of Esarhaddon's son Ashurbanipal, the Assyrian Empire began to unravel. Those Scythians still remaining in the West Asia, starting from 615 BC, began operating as allies of Cyaxares, the king of the Medes, in their war against the Assyrians. The allied forces of the Babylonians, Medes, Cimmerians, and Scythians sacked Nineveh in 612 BC, after which the mighty Neo-Assyrian Empire collapsed over the next 3 years. Then the Medes expelled the Scythians from West Asia, and they retreated to the Pontic steppe. Some remained, and some settled in Transcaucasia. But by the 6th century BC, the Scythians in the West Asia were completely assimilated culturally and politically into Median society, and no longer existed as distinct groups. The next major events to come are very important in the history of the Scythians. These upcoming events would add more fame and reputation of the Scythians as fierce warriors. This took place in about 512 BC, when Persian king Darius the Great, lured by the evident attraction of the wealthy cities of Greece, launched his European campaign. But before turning his attention to the Greeks, Darius decided to campaign against the European Scythians. What was his reason for his Scythians' invasion is still obscure. Before he started moving toward the Scythians, he ordered the Ionian naval force to sail to the mouth of the Danube River and build a bridge across it. While this was in progress, he built a bridge across over Bosphorus Strait and led his army across, setting foot on Europe for the first time. He marched through Thrace, northward towards the Danube, meeting little opposition except from the Getae, whom he defeated and enslaved. Darius crossed the Danube River and ordered the bridge to be dismantled, fearing that he would be attacked from the rear while he advanced. He then marched against the Scythians. But the response of the Scythians to the attack was to fall back. And they applied what some like to call it as the scorched earth policy, driving off herds, burning the forage, and blocking up the well springs, and doing everything to make the situation unfavorable for their enemies. And so they drew the Persian army deeper into the deserted land, always staying one day's march ahead. And when the Persians were dangerously far from the Danube, the Scythians began harrying the army with short surprise attacks, and then withdrawing back before the enemy can respond in force. Darius, unable to bring them into confrontation, sends a herald, asking them to surrender if they cannot dare to face him on the battlefield. The Scythians on their part replied that running away was part of their tactics, and that they do not fear anyone. Darius at this point was completely frustrated, and so he decided to abandon the campaign, and retreated under the cover of darkness, leaving behind sick and wounded, and his braying mules, to deceive the Scythian scouts. He crossed the Danube River, and came back to the comparative safety of Thrace, without accomplishing his goal of subduing the Scythians. At the turn of the 5th century BC, the ancient center of Scythians' power shifted to the south, to the region of the Dnieper Bend. And from here, they embarked on an expansionist venture. They raided south of the Danube, into Thrace, until the kingdom of Adrasian was formed. Later the Adrasian and the Scythians began to work together, and they imposed a rule on the forest steppe, and brought the Greek colonies under their rule. According to Pseudo-Hippocrates, toward the end of the 5th century, or the beginning of the 4th century, Sauromatai from the Volga River region moved westward across the Don into the Scythian territory. And this movement is taken as the mark of the beginning of the late Scythian period. And it may be due to these people migrating from the east that the Scythians began to retreat toward the south of the Danube River into the kingdom of Dobruja, where they had to fight the native Dacians. During the 4th century BC, the kingdom of Macedonia, beyond the northern border of Greece, grew to be a polity of considerable strength. Under King Philip II, its armies advanced northwards through Thrace, reaching as far as the river Danube, where they encountered the Scythians, under the leadership of King Aetius. Two kings having similar interests began to cooperate in their campaign against the Histrioni of Thrace. But in 339 BC, the relationship soured when Aetius refused to send Philip help. Two former allies confronted each other in the Danube estuary. Aetius, already 90 years of age, was killed, and his army crushed. Peace was later bought at the price of 20,000 Scythian women and a large number of horses. In the wake of this defeat, the empire of Aetius fell to pieces, and the Scythians lost their dominant position in the Pontic steppe until the reign of Scaurus in the 2nd century BC. And this was overall the whole story of the Scythian rule. Later what followed was their downfall and complete disappearance from the Pontic steppe. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel, and thanks for watching.